Hello and welcome to Dani Golden's podcast. Today I'm very excited because we have the lovely and talented Justin Farrell on. He is what I would refer to as a spiritual masseuse, but he's actually not a masseuse. He is so much more. He is the body centered. He creates a personalized healing journey for all of his clients, and I'm happy to be one of them. So just want to introduce him. And before we do that, if you haven't checked out the other podcast, please do. We just released Why We Wait for the Other Shoe to Drop. And there's some other amazing content out there on danigolden.com or my YouTube channel. So check it out. So what if I told you that healing your trauma doesn't have to start with your mind, but can actually begin with your body? I've heard before that the body keeps the score, but how much does it really remember? So today we're going to talk about the mind-body connection, how to center your body, what that even means, what that looks like, and again, what I would refer to as a spiritual massage. So Justin, say hello to the audience who is listening or viewing, please.
Yes, hello. Hello, everyone. Dani, so happy to be on here with you.
Well, I am so happy to have you. Just feel really grateful. Very excited to share this wonderful gift, like I said, that is Justin. I first discovered Justin through a friend of mine who was dealing with some trauma on her own and basically just said, hey, if you're dealing with some difficult stuff, this guy is amazing. I highly recommend that you go see him. And I did. And it was, a connection at first impression, I should say. And I feel like I myself too was struggling with my own trauma, just really recovering. I was recovering from thoracic outlet syndrome and just really uncomfortable in my own body. Things weren't aligning. And I had done physical therapy and all the Western modalities. And I just really I've always really responded well to massages and just connections and different Eastern medicinal theories. And so when I was introduced to Justin, I just felt like, wow, what a gift that he brings to the table. And I really was uninformed. So he kind of guided me through his techniques. He does craniosacral, Rolfing, and somatic experience. Like I said, I knew nothing about these methods. I just knew that I was struggling, and I was a former competitive swimmer. I still compete from time to time, but I mostly do it for fun, and I'm very active. I do karate and all these things, and just in life, regardless, I wanted to feel really comfortable in my own body and in my skin, and I was struggling to get there. So today, I want to share Justin with you guys and talk about what it is that he does and what is exactly this a centered body. So I'm going to pass it to you in a second, Justin. I just want to share a little joke really quick with the audience. So I kept calling Justin a spiritual masseuse. And when we were preparing for this when we were preparing for this podcast, I sent him the outline and was like, hey, and he's like, this is great, but I'm not a massage therapist. And I was like, wait, what? So I think it's important to make that distinction because for all the layman people out there who don't know any better, so Justin, will you please introduce yourself and tell the audience how you got into this, and then we'll get into more of like the details.
I almost didn't send that critique back to you.
Oh, really?
Yes. And
okay.
There's this, as someone who's in holistic health, in a hands-on modality, most of what I'm doing is hands on the body. It's easy for us to assume that that's massage and that I would be a massage therapist. And it's so important that anything we discuss or anything that I tell someone new to the practice, that it just relates to them. If I just go into my spiel and talk about the things I do, it can feel like a mouthful. As I'm imagining what that was just like for you. It's like these things are just, how do we talk about them? So I want to just take the pressure off that. Massage is one way to speak to some of what we're doing because it can feel like that at times. Mm-hmm. And I'm using a treatment table. Most of the time you're on the table, massage table. So when I sent that critique back to you, I was like, maybe not.
Oh, I loved it. I was like, oh my God, okay, this is so
Yeah,
interesting. I've been viewing it through this lens. And then I was like, okay, I'm incorporated into the outline because
totally.
let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
and in this
thank you.
world, especially if you're a professional, right? If you call yourself a
Mhm.
therapist or a counselor, a massage therapist, a Rolfer, craniosacral therapist, great. The list goes on and on and on and on.
Right.
But it needs to be relatable because it's about working with people. So to expand a little bit more on what I do and how it's different from massage, and you
Mhm.
said it very well. So I'm a Rolfer, which means I've studied Rolfing structural integration. I'm a craniosacral therapist, and I studied at the Upledger Institute, which is based in Florida. And then my most recent endeavor has been in somatic experiencing. And once you graduate that program, you're a somatic experiencing practitioner. So those are the three umbrellas that I practice under. That gives me the license to touch, and then it also gives me an option to dialogue with clients and bring out the story in a more somatic way, meaning some of the trauma work, how it shows up in the physical body. I often tell people we're taking the invisible and making it visible.
Like that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Ida Rolf, who founded Rolfing, she would say we work on the body because it's what we can get our hands on. Same kind of thing. It's tactile. The body is very tactile and it has its own process. So I hope that's a good enough introduction.
No, that's a wonderful answer. Yeah, I have more questions for you. No, that was great. Will you tell us about the mind body connection, how important it is in our daily lives? And for those watching, I'm looking at my notes because I don't want to miss anything for this amazing podcast. So just what does centering your body mean? What does that look like? And if you want, I can repeat these. And how does what you do integrate with trauma work, PTSD, and other ailments? I mean, I can speak to my personal experience, things that would arise during our work together when you would, working on me and things like that. So, for example, I noticed one of the things when in recovering from my trauma is that I would really lack personal compassion and grace and was very quick to judge myself. And it was manifesting in my body, I feel like through like hunched shoulders and just tightness. And as you've pointed out, and like my hands not being able to relax and my arms dropping down and things like that. And one of the best things that Justin said to me before one of our treatments was that, why don't you just view yourself, Dani, like an animal in nature and just observe and don't be so, quick to judge. And when he first said it, I was like, oh, that feels like that's like a very cathartic, anti-anxiety thought, that had never occurred to me. And so when you said it, it was just very helpful. And so when I would notice after I saw you and I would be out and about and things would stress me out or trigger me or whatever, I would purposely try to like breathe into it and just relax. And if I had an emotional outburst that I couldn't control as a result, I would find the place to have more compassion for myself. So I thought that was just very insightful and wanted to share that personal story with the audience because these are just the little things that you get, which are huge on your path to healing, that personalized healing journey. So going back to, will you tell us about the mind body connection and how it affects us on a daily basis?
Totally. What a topic.
Yeah.
There's so many directions you can go with that. And so I love that we can maybe relate it back to your own personal experience.
Yes.
And what I would have noticed in that session was that there was a need for permission. And when I get information to cue a client, it usually comes from what's happening in the body. And what's happening in the body can often be based off of what's occurring in the mind. So the work that we're doing together can be unique in the sense that you're getting an experience of the body because there's touch and we're cueing in the sensation, but then we're also talking through things. And the reason I'll choose language to start the conversation is based off of the information I get from the body. And that's the skill that we grow over the course of years. So as a practitioner, the mind-body connection is undeniable. And to me, what that basically means is that the mind can feed the response of the body, and the body response can feed back to the mind. Where it gets tricky is that the language isn't the same. So I often say in somatics, like, it's going to get really weird in here. And when we start talking about things, we just want to speak to any images we're getting. This would be body-based. Any images we're getting, sensations we're having, any behavior that we may want to do. Like, I feel like I just want to run. Or I feel like I need to scream. And that can take us into something going on in the mind. But we'll get to that place. The mind is usually where the resolution happens. We'll get to that place once we get the process going in the body.
Oh, wow.
It's confusing, right?
It's confusing, and I get it, because like there would be times where we're working together and I would have the memory of something that happened. And I remember I would say to you, and you're like, what are you thinking? Or what's happening right now? And I would say, oh, I just had this memory. And I would start laughing and looking at that memory as like, oh, that's so interesting. I don't remember feeling like traumatized from that experience. I don't remember feeling like that was such a memorable moment that it would turn up, but clearly it's somewhere trapped in my nervous system that it's recalling it for a reason.
Right. And so when that information arises from the body, it shows up in the mind, but it might not be what we would have found if we started with the psychology. Sometimes
that's what I find
with the psychology, you just stay in the language that we use, yours being English, and you speak to what happens. If we speak from the body and that goes into the mind, we can be talking in color, right? I think, Dan, you're someone who sees and experiences color, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All kinds of things. And so it's that permission to be like, hey, things might get weird, but if we take the filter off and allow that information to arise, then it becomes something we can make sense of, which would be the mind. What's arising in the body, we can make sense of in the mind.
I love that.
Work in the opposite direction. So to find that mind-body connection, you interrupt. If something's going on in the mind and there's a response happening in the body, boom, interruption. Hey, do you notice what's going on in your diaphragm? Do you notice where your shoulders are? Now we're in the body. Oh, I do. Okay, what would it be like? Maybe coming with some touch, light touch on the shoulders. This is where I'm feeling for the nervous system. The nervous system has behaviors, feeling for fascia and connective tissue. That's going to feel a certain way. We get something to happen, a softening, some movement. Oh, I'm just thinking of this time I had with my mom. We're back in the mind, right? So you can't separate the two. They're in this constant dance. And this is just from experience. My experience, though, is that they're a different language. And we get to play with language when we're working with the mind-body connection. It's more hard.
Well, and I also think it's giving the process of the healing experience grace and compassion, and like you said, being open to it, because the things that come up. And then I was thinking analysis by paralysis by analysis, right? So you're staying in the mind and you try to approach it logically, and trauma doesn't always work that way. Or we often hear that it doesn't work, linear. It's not linear. So if you have something occur in the body and you're able to digest it mentally, like tightness in the shoulders, or, not being able to just relax, how hard it is to just, that's why meditation is hard for a lot of people. It's hard to turn the mind off. It's hard to just relax, or even just sit with thoughts that you don't want to sit with because you want to change the channel and sit with a thought that you want to control. It's information. And I feel like what you do is so powerful because it gives us information and insight that we wouldn't get logically or from the mind.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it takes the gas pedal off. So when we're working with trauma, it takes the focus, that narrow focus on, oh my gosh, I'm here to talk about this thing again. There might be a lot of charge around that.
Of course. Yeah.
Right? And so that would be the body, the charge.
Oh.
To talk about this thing, that would be the mind.
Okay.
Right? And if we just go, okay, what's creating the intensity? Well, it's the belief that we're going to need to go into this story. So as a body worker, I go, well, I also know I can just back away from the story. I can work with the body and maybe not talk at all initially.
Right.
An awareness of why this person's here. And then bring in some intention for gentle contact, not only with touch, but also for that person to experience, so that there's not a sense of overwhelm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see how these things, even as we talk, like it's really hard to just stay in one part of this because it's so, they're always doing this, crisscrossing, mind, body, mind, body, mind, body.
Well, I keep thinking like the ocean.
Yeah.
It's just one giant, we're water, right? So it's fluid and everything's flowing, and to separate. So this is really answering that question about, the mind body connection and the importance and what that looks like. And what it looks like is it's a complicated living and breathing organism as we are.
Yes.
And
so think about even how you describe the work, a spiritual massage.
Yes.
That is a description of mind and body.
Yeah.
Right? This experience of like, I'm getting the physical massage and I'm having a spiritual experience. Those are separate things, but they also interweave, just like mind body. And we can use different words to talk about the same thing.
Right?
Yeah. Which is ultimately, too, that if you approach therapeutics in this way, that there's no separation and you strive to work with people who do both, counseling and touch work, you're going to get a compounded result for your efforts.
I would imagine, yes, because you're exploring it this one way and then you're adding on this other element that's only going to be more helpful.
And you can't separate the two.
Yeah, I would imagine. I definitely was very forthright with the things that I was dealing with. Whenever I come in, I'm like, okay, this is what's going on. This is what's coming up. And we talk about it. And then Justin will just have me stand there and look at my body position and be like, okay, turn around, and then notice certain things. And it's amazing because I won't tell him, and I'm not playing any games. I'm not like, oh, let's see if he's right. But I just won't always share, or I'll forget. And you're like, okay, I'm going to work on your right area because I'm sensing. And I'm like, oh, and as soon as he says it, I'm like, oh my God, that area was the one that was hurting, or that's the one that's been ailing me. So it's very interesting how I feel like you can look at the human body and really see it and have that gift. And then be able to use the tools that you've learned through your profession to heal others.
Yeah. And that observation, the body analysis, and the standing from the seat from the front, the back, the sides, that would be a Rolfing approach.
Okay.
How the body's organized and gravity. Right? And it gives me initial information to be like, okay, like right shoulder's lifted and rotated. I wonder where that's coming from. And when you start thinking that way, where's that coming from? Which fascia points us to? It could be coming from how we're clenched in the left foot, and so we don't have support, and the shoulder comes up. It could be coming from a pelvic injury that we forgot about. If you start there, and then you layer on the nervous system work, which is craniosacral therapy, and it's a much gentler, more spacious approach. If you layer that in, then you also get pointed towards the area that needs to be addressed. So you have the postural assessment, which gives this really bold outline of where you want to start. And then you have the nervous system, which is going to talk to me non-verbally, and it's practice with ears, but it gives me information. It says, hey, pay attention to here. We layer on the two, and you have, again, an experience that's just has more potential than if you're only working with structure or if you're only working with the nervous system.
Yeah, this is blowing my mind. Because we've never sat and talked about it. Like, it's like I come in, I get the treatments and stuff, which is why I wanted to take this time to like dive deeper. Because I just feel like there's so much information that you have about, what you do and how it can be so helpful. And I feel like I was lucky enough to be introduced to it. So I want to introduce it to other people. And I just think it's just so fascinating. And we don't talk enough about this kind of stuff. We kind of touch upon it, but we don't really dive deep into how all these modalities and methods that you use work together.
Yeah. And there's a reason that in session we don't talk about the why so much.
Mm-hmm.
The underpinning of all of these things are super technical. Right? You learn a lot of anatomy, you learn a lot of physiology, you're looking at things architecturally. And then there's another layer that's just like the spirit. Where you're like, oh my gosh, you have an experience or you see change when you're in a class, and it's just mind blowing. And how you get there becomes so intriguing. So going into more of the how we get there, and the lesson of the work is step back and do less, which has been a wild learning journey.
Wait, sit back and do less?
Step back and do less. So I love talking about this too, because there's such a misunderstanding that Rolfing is painful and that it's this heavy-handed, really deep, and it can be. We can be working really deeply into the fascia or the connective tissue with pressure, but also if you're in communication with tissue and you feel when it contracts and you meet that wall, you soften up so that tissue can relax. We're not wanting to put people into pain. There might be a challenge with some pressure or working certain areas like up by the pubic bone, the midline. You do work in the mouth and the jaw for TMJ issues. But it's always an invitation. It should always be an invitation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm thinking of when we've had this with my neck before, where I've said to you, how come, it's not loosening up? And you're like, it's not ready, and I'm not going to pressure it. Like, I've done enough on it today that's going to work. And you're like, and I remember looking at you, and this wasn't too long ago. And I was like, I feel like my neck is failing me. Like, it won't loosen up. And you just looked at me and you started laughing and you said, you need to give it time. You need to give it time. Like, this is your journey. I can't influence it. You need to give it time. And then I remember, like, it was shortly thereafter where I had like a full on adjustment, and I was just sitting, and all of a sudden it was like, and I was like, whoa,
yes.
Whoa,
That moment was probably when we were using the least amount of pressure. Yes, I remember that. And that's that overlay. We have the body intelligence. You could also call it the body mind, because we now know these things are the same.
Yeah.
And what we're telling ourselves or the experiences we have and the beliefs are going to create a response in the body. And the holding that we have, if there's not an injury, the holding that we have is usually subconscious with the body. We can make that material conscious and release. I think that's harder to do, because it's like it's telling someone, just relax right there.
Oh, God.
I mean, how many times have you been told that in massages or body work, right?
Or just in life, just let it go, just relax.
As if it's that easy.
Right. Like, I haven't been trying to do that.
Mind-body connection.
Right.
So we talk to the body instead, and that's using a different language, which can even sometimes be nonverbal. So I'll sit there and I'm asking questions, and I'm listening to what your system's saying back. And then there can be an experience subconsciously of a letting go. Then we can come back in and do more of the architectural work, because there's an opportunity to do that. There's space for that now. Instead of resistance or holding, and let me just get in there and keep grinding on it as if I believe I can do that with my mind.
Yes, and how we often do that to ourselves on a daily basis, just with everything.
Absolutely.
So that's funny that the mind body would do the same thing that we do consciously. Of course, it would pick up on our innate characteristics and act it out on a more micro level, right?
Absolutely, as an integrated system.
Yeah. Wow. This is awesome. Okay. How many years have you been doing this?
Just about 10. I'll be celebrating my 10th year at the end of this year.
Oh, well, congratulations.
A decade feels like a milestone.
It is. It is. I'm sure it went by very quickly, but also, you know, a lot of work went into that. And, you know, it's nice to have 10 years under your belt on things like, you know, something you're passionate about that you're amazing at. Uh,
I'm lucky to have started young.
yeah. Yeah. How did you know that you wanted to do this? How did the,
It's one of my favorite questions and most challenging to answer
okay.
because it compiles so much time. I mean, honestly, it came from a place of never knowing what I wanted to do
Oh,
and
yeah.
being a seeker.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little ironic because I was quite a punk and rebellious growing up. You know, it's just always looking for the things that are missing instead of falling into line, if you will, or becoming part of a system. And now here I am working with systems. It's just in a more punk and rebellious way. So I
Hey,
still have.
I feel that. That's probably why we understand each other. Yeah. I definitely was trying to figure out my way, and instead of surrendering, I was fighting. And it was like
Yeah,
Sisyphus with the boulder falling on me all the time, you know,
totally,
trying to, yeah.
totally.
Everyone you know, telling you to go left and you go right and what have you.
Yeah, and there's so many ways we get information, you know. And the information I got to start doing this didn't come through academia; it came from life experiences. Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting. So it was like life was feeding you this path.
Yeah, I mean, I was feeling a bit lost and was uh, again just like working towards something that I didn't feel I had purpose in,
Mm-hmm.
and I just made a big shift in my life. I took some serious time away from my career, and I cleaned up my diet. I found yoga. I started drinking
Yeah.
more water, like some really simple things
Mm-hmm.
that helped bring me into my body. And then I can make some clear decisions about what I wanted to do with my life instead of being in the anxiety of it all.
Yeah. That's funny. I was having that conversation with a friend of my mom last night about that. Like they were talking about their life experiences with work and things like that. And, you know, it's very interesting that you realize the older you get when you reflect back that life is a series of things that are put in place for a reason and you can't control that. And you're not going to have someone else's life. You're going to have your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It only took me a while. Um, Well, what have you learned about the body and why this form of healing is essential and beneficial beyond what you've shared? Because you've already shared like a lot about this. And then I'll just lay out the question so you can answer them whatever way you want. What has this work taught you about the human body and about yourself, how the body is interconnected, the importance of connecting all the pieces within to create a higher functioning body? We talked a lot about how our mind and bodies are connected. I think it would be helpful for the audience, like if we're not aligned. I kind of led to this with my tension in my neck and things like that. But how would someone who's not aligned, so if they're like listening to this podcast or watching it and they're like, oh, you know, maybe this kind of work would help me and I would want to seek this out, how would their ailments present themselves? Would they have headaches, sleep issues? Maybe they would. I joked that I was nervously sweating when we were trying to set up the recording of this. Leg pain. For me, it was nervous system issues and inability to self regulate, trauma healing, things like that. I think that would be interesting to hear from you. And then how what you do heals others will obviously be integrated into this answer. And how might someone feel after a massage, or not a massage, after working with you? Will there be a movement of emotions, anger, soreness, things like that? And then I can add in my personal stuff after you talk. But yeah, that's a lot. If you want me to repeat anything, let me know. I just have so many questions.
It's so good. It's really fun. And I love the flow of all of this. I think what excited me most about what you asked, and it was in the first part of what you said, like,
Okay.
what you learned the most. And that, when I hear that question, I can get like, again, I can get really technical, or I can be in more of the wow of like, this is really cool. And I like speaking from that place because it's less.
Okay.
No, it just makes life so interesting. And have you experienced gratitude?
Yes, I'm definitely experiencing it a lot more. I was sick for a long time with a sinus infection, which I think I shared with you, and just driving to swimming and being grateful that I was feeling healthy, and I was back to my routine. There was an immense level of gratitude. Yes.
Nice. And that probably had a flavor to it, and it lifted the energy.
I think I cried a little bit, like tears of happiness.
Right. Tears of happiness. Gratitude. Have you experienced reverence?
What's an example of reverence?
Reverence is gratitude on the biggest scale, is how I would speak to it. It is a deep knowing of the sweetness of life.
I actually think I might have had that a week or so ago for the first time in maybe ever, or maybe in a very long time. And it was intoxicating and overwhelming. And I just was so grateful to be where I'm at in life, to be surrounded by the amazing people I find in my life, to everyone's healthy, to an extent, right? Happy, and just feel like I could just sit back and like relax for a second and just breathe and just,
Nice.
be, let go. Yeah.
Yes. Reverence is what I have learned about the body. That's what we can most access reverence. It's
Elaborate.
like tears that are thick and they just fall real slow, and it's an experience of the juiciness of life. That comes from a body-based experience, from what I've seen and what I've had myself. That's what I've learned about the body, is it's where the deepest sense of soul reverence comes from.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of like not the technical answer. I could give you that too.
No. I mean, if you want to, please do. But I think that's just very interesting. I'm just going to digest that for a while.
Yeah. Think of gratitude and then feel reverence, or imagine it. Here's another example.
Okay.
The deepest sense of letting go without losing control and give reverence. So what we said about, can't we just let go? What if I just would have let go? Well, if we let go and fall into nothing, that's not safe. If we let go and fall into gratitude and then with reverence, that's different. And getting people there and feeling that and experiencing that personally is like the best drug you can imagine.
I could see that.
It's like a tingling, it's like this fountain of tingles. It just feels good. And you have such gratitude to the point of like a spiritual awakening or a spiritual divinity that you're like, yeah, this is good.
Yes. Like I said, I think I've been feeling that in pockets, like on and off for the past couple weeks, where I definitely have been feeling like it's gratitude on steroids, where it's literally like, oh my gosh, how is this my life? Like, this is kind of amazing. Yeah.
It's simple and it's organismic. It's of the organism. It is like in there for all of us.
Yeah, and I can see how. I mean, I'm feeling it now. Like, now that you're talking about it and you're bringing it out. It's really. You almost feel like you're gonna explode.
Yeah.
From love, like love could burst out of you and just like.
Yeah.
I'd be like a love bomb.
Yes.
Okay. Very cool. I don't even know where to go after that.
Yeah. Because who
Well,
doesn't want to
so
just stay there?
yeah, I know, right? Well, okay, let's talk about. Okay, so now we've addressed the like what you've learned and what how what this has taught you, and I just think that's so fascinating. What do you think? So, for people out there who might not realize that some of the ailments they're dealing with might be manifesting from or could be looked at from a different angle. How would those issues present themselves? Like, would they have migraines or, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've just seen a little bit of all things,
Okay.
from vertigo to chronic fatigue,
Oh,
PTSD. Right, symptoms manifest in so many different ways, and so PTSD specifically, would that be?
yes.
Yeah. So I work with some military and some vets, and the the you just tracking. So again, I need a little bit of information of why someone's curious or wanting to show up, and
Mm-hmm.
then it's the process of observing the body,
Mm-hmm.
connecting with the mind, and treating. Usually with PTSD, you're treating the nervous system, and you're building capacity for that person to be in their experience without it being overwhelming, and then
Mm-hmm.
coming to some kind of, whether it's a, well, generally always is because it's post-traumatic, but some relived negotiation of the event. Like,
Right.
for one thing, I honestly think that, excuse me, the word can work really good here again, but a reverence of what we've been through, what we
Mm-hmm.
survived, that we did survive. We're safe now. And not only believing that, but living that experience of being safe now. That's that mind body again. And that
Yeah.
is the skill in the practice, is how do you take that in words? I can tell you exactly what you need to do in 10 minutes, right? It's not going to mean anything to that person unless they can have an experience of that.
Absolutely. Because you can tell yourself you're safe,
Yeah.
but believing and living in that space is completely hard. And impossible if you're having a flashback or you're being triggered. I
Yeah.
can't imagine, if someone, you know, a veteran is having those issues and, they're still feeling like maybe they're on the battlefield or whatever issue it is
Yeah.
that they're recovering from.
Yeah.
And whatever, yeah, how do you tell yourself, I'm not there anymore? I'm here. I'm safe.
Yes. And this is the craziest thing, Dani, but it's an awesome lesson too, that you don't, with post-traumatic stress, again, you take the focus off a little bit so that the system gets a chance to rebound. If we
Okay.
just focus on the negative, we don't get to any positive. That's not how it works.
Right.
So you actually introduce positive things. What's this person's resource? Where do they find even little bits of joy in their life? And now we're playing with the system, and we're spending some time here in the trauma, and then we're going, hey, and your golden retriever isn't an amazing animal. Tell me about that last walk you went on with this dog that you love. So now we have an image. Usually we get a body response, and we can hang out there in a little while, because surely enough, we're going to go back here.
Right.
And then you work with someone's capacity. If something feels overwhelming and the tissues tighten and we're having a panic attack, that might not be tolerable at
Right.
first. Over time, those symptoms are not as strong, and it gives us more space to be with them, go through the cycles of the nervous system, and then feel a sense of relief and dissipation.
Yeah,
And
I love, yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. No, I could keep going
No, no,
on.
no. Please continue.
um, and so, and it's just the goal, right, is to do these things in treatment isn't cheap, and we all want efficiency. So it's respecting the process and also going, how can I get there as efficiently as possible? And so this also doesn't have to be a lifelong thing, right? We want to be making progress. We want to become aware. And there's layers. So it's about not just bringing in a sledgehammer all the time and being like, hey, like, I just want this out, right? I hear that so much. I just want this out.
Hello.
And it's finding different language. It's having someone with you to create some resonance, to create some sense of belonging, connection, and safety. That's the bodywork piece. And then navigating our way through the rhythm that's natural, recognizing these things as natural, not shaming or blaming ourselves for what's happened, right? A car accident. Well, if I just would have gotten over, right? Well,
Right.
we forget how much was going on and that we survived still. And we still
Right.
survived, right? And there's an X amount number of options that we could have taken, but we're in fight, flight, freeze. We do what we need to survive. After the event, quite often as human beings, we're not discharging that survival energy. That's when we can get our hand on it. It becomes visible to a practitioner. You can see that. You make it visible to the person experiencing it. And then we navigate this river up, down, up, down, up, down until it gets bigger, wider, stronger. Bigger sense of relief, right? More of the story can come into play. It's so interesting and it's so simple.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely make it sound, you definitely simplify it in a way. And what I think is really interesting that I just wanted to recap for the audience is that something I learned is that I used to like, if you picture your trauma like in a cup and like your cup is clean of water, right? So it's clear water and then your trauma happens. So it's all dirty and it's got rocks and it's all this stuff in it, right? I used to think like I had to go in and scoop out all the dirt and the rocks and whatever. And what I saw on this video was this woman was pouring clean water into her dirty cup to create, then the clean water was representing new life experiences. So essentially what was happening was the bad ones were flowing out while the good ones were now filling her cup. So it was like getting rid of the dirt when the new ones were coming in. And I think that's very helpful for people to hear. And something I needed to hear too, is that I thought like, again, this like, paralysis by analysis, or I could, if I just, if they just press harder on this knot, it'll come out, or if I just only focus on the negative. And I think one thing I learned from my sessions with you is that you were always talking about this playful nature I had and this joy. And what happened as a result of my trauma was I became super rigid to try to control things and just like had less flexibility, which is not innate to who I am. And so then the more we worked together, you were able to see like my joking and my sense of, my sense of humor and things come out, my playful nature come out. And I think that's really important. And that's also, ties in with the grace and the compassion. Like that doesn't happen in the first session, that happens over time. But I think your ability to work with your clients on bringing and pointing those things out, like tell me about your dog, tell me about the things that put a smile on your face. It really lets that person be able to escape and remember. Because one of the things that happened to me was like, you forget all the fun times you have when you're traumatized.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
You forget the things that make you smile and make you happy. You forget the person you were. And so to find these little pieces, like you saying, like walking your dog or whatever, how helpful and like what a gift is that, and I know I keep using that word gift, but it really is. It's like when someone can show you something that makes your life brighter. That's you might as well just put it under a tree.
Yeah. Can I talk about your analogy? Because I loved it so much.
Yes, please.
Pouring positive experience, the clear water into a glass that has mud or dirty water.
Yes, I got this from someone's video that they were talking about this topic.
I love it. And if we nuance that even more, sludge, clean water, that starts now mixing. Now we have a mixture. We have both.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
And
the
you can
good and the bad.
adding positive experience, positive things, adding to that, clarifying it, but they're also going to mix.
Right.
And it's so funny, you know, themes show up in these conversations. Mind, body, positive, negative experience, right?
Yeah.
We can't have one without the other. We need both of them to have a healthy system.
Right.
Human beings with nervous systems and human lives, right? And just to navigate the world. So the get it out mentality, that is linear, and it's not, it refutes the magic of life, so that you don't get those experiences of reverence. If you just get something out, you don't get reverence.
Yeah.
You don't get the feeling of like, oh my God, I survived that and I'm so grateful.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things I've had to learn, is that you can't have the good without the bad. And that's a very hard thing to say and to accept. But when you can get there and look at it, and, you know, it's like, I wanted the glass to just be clear water. I never wanted the mud in there. And it wasn't my mud that got put in there. So, you know, you have this resentment about your glass being dirty. And it took me a long time to get over that. But then that's why I liked that video that I saw that woman did, and what you're talking about. And even though you're saying like, yeah, you need to have both, there is still a part of my nervous system that's like, no, I want the clear glass. I want the clear glass. But still,
this is also why I think that people need to be, it's a good idea to look for services like these as not a maintenance, but as something that you do to continue to stay in that flush, right? Because the sludge that happens, it's because we become focused on whether it's a pain that we're avoiding in our body, and oh, well, I'll be fine, but that sludge is always there and it gets piled on, or an experience that's affecting us, we're starting to get symptoms, they will start yelling at you, and then you have more sludge. Instead of this like consistent relationship to things happening in our lives, us dealing with them, things happening, us dealing with them. And then you get you don't need lifelong support at that point, right? Weekly, lifelong stuff to work through this one thing. You're just like, oh, right, like this helps me stay in my flow.
Yeah.
Water in, water out.
No, I love that. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, I think it's always a good refresher and a good reminder. And sometimes, you're always learning different lessons. So you get over one lesson, and then something new introduces itself, and then it introduces that sludge, and the reminder to, integrate it and use it to your advantage, like a power, right? It's not happening to me, it's happening for me. And there's something, to be learned from this. And this is just going to enrich me even more. It's nutrition, right? Is definitely, yeah. I agree with that.
Answered any of your questions?
You answered a lot. I think this is just really helpful. I mean, you answered how you heal others. How might someone feel? How might someone feel after your services? I mean, I can speak to how I feel, whereas, sometimes you're just like, that was amazing. And then, days later you have adjustments or things happen, or, I've even remembered walking out a couple of times and feeling frustrated because with the neck thing, where I'm like, oh, I wanted it to be looser and whatever. And then, over time it loosens up, and it just, the progress of what transpired during the session is definitely tangible and addressable. It's just not always immediate. And I think that's an interesting thing that I can share with the audience. And I'll fall asleep sometimes, or I'll like go to different places where I'm not asleep, but I'm like in some other, like, you're just so relaxed, and it's like, you're not used to it. For me, I haven't been, my nervous system was so used to not being relaxed. And so that was an interesting thing. And then when you're like, okay, and you're like, don't rush to get up. And then like, I'm back in my body, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to get up, and I'm rushing. And then that's interesting too. So there's a lot of, I can't really describe it with words, but it's very interesting.
Yes, I think you said all the things that I would say, and this is how I would say it: is the the work should continue to have some kind of impact. The things you notice right after session might not be the thing you notice the next day or the following day. We want to stay in the process.
Yes.
There may also be an experience of energy in or energy out. You may leave feeling tired.
Yes.
Like we're in a rest state, or even just like, oh my gosh, I need to lay down. Or you may leave feeling energized, like, ooh. It's depends on because I make an assessment each time. What does this person need now in respect to their primary goals? And
Right.
that might be like, oh, we are like really ramped up and high. We need to come down. And I'd be like, whoa, we're in this like sludgy place. Let's energize the system. And that can be through the fascia connective tissue with Rolfing, or it can be with the nervous system and craniosacral therapy.
I love this. Yes, you are definitely answering all my questions.
It's a fun, right? It's fun. I'm trying to use language too that's different than how we normally talk, because you have to have the permission for that if we work together too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going through, and I feel like we've gone through everything. It's not, it's body work, but it's not in your average massage. We talked about this. We talked about the different types of healing and therapy you practice and their benefits and how they really work together. And we also talked about your experience with people with dealing with PTSD and if they have certain injuries and how they can manifest so differently. And what I love too about your practice, it's called The Body Centered, and your tagline is creating a personalized healing journey, which is just, a reminder that we're not all the cookie cutter. I mean, as much as we're alike, we are, but our body responds to different things differently. And each client that you interact with is going to receive a different treatment based on who they are and how they present themselves. Is there anything else you want to add before we get to the podcast question?
Oh, podcast question?
Yeah, we have a podcast question.
Good. I was going to say, this is just kind of fun, but I've been really nerding out on all the language stuff.
Okay.
And, like how much we find somatic language and just phrases that we use. Like I felt understood. That's a physical, I felt understood, like under the feet, right? Like that. I was moved to tears. We don't say like I was frozen to tears, or it's always moved. And it was there's all these things that have been connecting for me in our language where I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, like if there's an emotional release on the table, it comes once there's a thawing, like once there's movement. And then we have tears. I was moved to tears, right? So it's just fun to see these parallels and how all this stuff, again, just crisscrosses and weaves. And it's kind of a fun thing I've been nerding out on.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Well, I'm going to tell the audience, if you guys have more questions for Justin after we're done with that, I would love to have him on again and talk about this stuff. So just let me know what those questions are. And if you just want to come up and talk about these terms again, I would love to have you and talk about these, because I think this is so interesting. I was moved to tears. You're totally right. Do you have another one? Not to put you on the spot.
Go through your own memory bank too, and think of like.
I'm trying to, but I'm just.
Stop yourself. It's a word for. There's so much.
I was crying, laughing. I mean, is that kind of the same? But you're not like crying, but like there is there's like the cathartic release of like of laughing. That's like very similar.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not the same.
Hold your head high. Right.
Yeah.
We'll come up with some more.
Okay. Okay. I like this. This is a fun little word. I love wordplay. Okay. So I might have already asked this. or you might have already answered this with the reverence, but in case you didn't, what is the biggest thing you have learned through doing this work that you would have never expected that you would like to share with the audience?
That every single person is different. Everybody is different. We're all little snowflakes.
Oh, I love that.
And
Because we all want to be different.
Yeah. There's some basics that we can understand about how things work, and then how we get ourselves into predicaments, or how pain expresses itself. The mystery of pain, it requires us to focus on the individual and treat the individual. And, looking for like the big solution. There's not a boxy way to do that from what I've seen. But if you work with the individual, whatever their beliefs are, whatever their history is, and you treat that body that's different from the one before and the one that's coming next, even if they're all 5 low back pain clients, it's going to look different for each person. And so I would say that just continues to surprise me. And
I love that.
With people, and it's influenced who I work with and I get treatment from, is that it's someone who's open-minded, and I get treated as an individual.
Absolutely. I love that answer. Well, anything else that you want to add before I start promoting you?
No, this has been fun. I love doing this.
This is great.
Yeah, I love it's a reminder to me that I'm really doing something that I love and believe in. So thanks for seeing that too. And I'm glad that you've been impacted by that, and I've been impacted from working with you. And yeah.
Yeah, I just feel so lucky, and I feel like you really get it, and you really understand what's going on a deeper level. And when you suffer, as I have in the past, with ailments that you can't really describe, or you're not really sure, or you feel like you're going crazy because it's just you're having these aberrations of your personality come out that you're not used to. It's just like you said, I feel understood. And there is a grounding element to that when you've been like floating like a balloon in air, aimlessly.
Ooh. Neck deep. I was in neck deep.
Oh, yes. I identify with that one. Oh, yeah. I identify with, yes, I felt that one. There's the body language. There's the mind body. I'm in over my head.
Yes. That's even more, right?
The drowning. Yeah.
I interrupted with a very intense.
No, that is, please interrupt. No, that was worth it. Okay, we're going to have it. Okay, we're going to play around with this, and we're going to have Justin back, everyone. Well, below this podcast, I will put his information. His website is https www.thebodycenter.com. So check it out. Justin Farrell, I'll put his phone number underneath, or his email, whatever he's comfortable with, but you will be able to get in touch with him. And we just, don't just heal your mind. I wrote a little sign out for myself because I wanted to say this to all the listeners. Don't just heal your mind, heal your body. As Justin says, and I've discovered for myself, everything is connected. Love yourself. Treat yourself and listen to your body. Something I've learned is that something interesting that I've learned is that healing is not just always about doing more. Sometimes it's about slowing down and just listening, like to your body.
Do you even feel how that just slows down, right? Nice.
So hard, but something we all need to do.
Nice. Thanks for reminding.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Dani.